Hi there. Today we're going to talk about brain rot, what we think brain rot is and how you might be able to break through it a little bit. I am not going to tell you to work harder. I am not going to tell you this is a discipline problem. I'm not going to tell you that you're weak-willed or stupid. None of those things are true. You're just very, very overwhelmed. And to get back into a state of meaningful living where you're pursuing things that are naturally interesting to you, where you are able to pursue art or your own education or a career trajectory that excites you, in order to get back to that, you just have to set up some very, very basic systems in your lifestyle to make that frictionless. I want you to recognize that you are surrounded by distraction. Social media, other forms of cheap dopamine, things that just take you away from the meaningful work that requires effort to do it. And so when you have distraction around you, of course you're not going to do the work. It's difficult to do work. It's difficult to learn. It's difficult to build skills. And so when you're surrounded by distraction that makes you feel good in the short term, you're a human being. And if you don't have structure, you're going to pursue those things. So I just want to point out for a second that you might not be as broken as you realize. This idea of brain rot is like you're not cooked. You're not cooked. You're just a little bit out of shape mentally. When you're physically out of shape, it doesn't mean that it's over for you forever. It just means you need to get on a very sustainable fitness regimen that teaches you to move your body in a way that is enjoyable, is a little bit difficult, but that if you were to stick to for a long period of time, you would get in good shape. You'd be able to move your body with more freedom. You'd be able to pursue other movement-related goals. And it comes down to two very basic systems, inputs and outputs, right? If you want to get in shape, you eat better, you eat whole foods, and you move your body. We're going to apply the exact same system to your brain, because if you do that for your mind, you will feel a lot better, and you'll be able to expand your brain. You'll be able to build new skills, you'll be able to pursue things that are difficult, and you'll live a meaningful life in the age of consumption and short-form stimulation and distraction. And that would be pretty cool. That would be a great start. It comes down to inputs and outputs. If you can understand that, if you can set these up intentionally, you're going to be in great shape. The cool part is you can start making significant progress on this today, like right now. I'm not saying you can fix everything overnight. We're talking about rewiring your habits and the way you relate to the world around you, which takes a long time. It is, in and of itself, a skill set, and skills take a long time to build. So this will require patience, and that is far and away the most difficult part of this process. The hardest part about this process, and I'm just letting you know now, is the patience required to execute it sustainably. It requires you to do this every single day. And it's not going to be perfect every day. You are going to stumble. You are going to have moments where you turn to cheap dopamine sources and scrolling. That's going to happen. I want you to expect that right now. I don't want you to assume that after watching this video, everything is going to switch like that, and you're going to have this perfect streak of positive behavior extending forever into the future. There's going to be moments where you stumble and fall. It's important that you prepare for that. And you can also try to avoid it, but just don't beat yourself up if and when it happens. Be prepared for it and have systems in place that you can fall back on so that you get back on track. Okay, inputs and outputs. We're going to redesign your inputs. This is the nutrition of your brain. So if you wanted to get in better physical shape, you would look at, okay, what am I putting in my body? Am I drinking enough water? Am I eating the right balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats? Right? Am I eating whole foods? Am I eating foods that make my individual body feel good? Am I taking into account my individual sensitivities? These are all questions that I want you to ask yourself for your brain. What is the information that I'm letting into my skull? Am I taking that information in intentionally, or am I living in a constant state of passive consumption where I'm just scrolling on my phone and accepting whatever my algorithm gives me? That is exactly what we want to avoid. Media is one of our greatest inventions of all time. Humans did a great job with that. What we want to avoid is the passive consumption of media that does not serve us and really only stimulates, distracts, or entertains us with no greater value. So we're going to take a look at that. Audit yourself pretty honestly here. How much time am I spending consuming? Not just your screen time alone, but what is it that my screen time consists of? How much time am I spending on Instagram, on TikTok? Now, you don't need to spend very long on this, because if you're watching this video, probably those numbers are a little bit out of whack, and we don't need to ruminate on that point. The more important thing is thinking to yourself and really feeling within your body, what do I want to replace it with? Because remember that you have a natural sense of curiosity underneath all of the overwhelm you're feeling right now. There's a part of you that you were probably more connected to as a child that is naturally curious, that is a scientist at heart, or an artist, or a performer, or an athlete, or you have a spirit within you that wants to get out and wants to exist fully in the world. And it gets dampened down by all of the distraction and cheap entertainment. Over time, we want to connect you back to that feeling and design your mental inputs around that feeling. If you return to a state of low stimulation, you'll find it a lot easier. So in the beginning, if you're wondering what to do right now, it's like you don't need to, go to the library and rent 50 books. Rent, whatever. You need to probably just get some sleep and like turn off the noise for a little bit. And then once you get bored enough, like you'll find your curiosity again. And then instead of trying to satisfy your boredom with passive consumption, you're just going to choose something that actually fires you up. That's what it is in a nutshell. Here's what I would recommend. If you have no idea where to start, short stories, literature, but not the classics that are like huge and long and really overwhelming or intimidating. You're going to choose short stories. I have been enjoying George Saunders recently. He's a phenomenal short story writer. Or you can get you could just look up Best American Short Stories 2024 and you can backlog that all the way the last few years. But short stories are what I've personally been using to kind of feed myself media that is a little bit harder, requires a little bit more effort to engage with, but that actually fires up my curiosity and makes me want to create. That's a really good state to be in. Music, movies, TV shows, video games, they can all work. There's no form of media that is bad or evil on its own. Please understand that. It is how you engage with the media. Seriously. You can make short form, Instagram, TikTok, Reels, all that stuff. Like that can be intentionally consumed. But you need to be able to ask yourself, why am I watching this? What is this giving me? What am I learning by watching this? And then you don't always have to do this, but you should be able to have a conversation with yourself or someone else after you consume it, answering those questions. Being able to process the information, being able to actually digest it. Because when you don't do that, you consume information, you don't get any nutrients from it, so to speak, and it just gets added to the pile of stimulation and noise that makes you feel overwhelmed, and that you try to self-soothe with more stimulation, creating a vicious cycle that makes you feel like you have brain rot. You don't have brain rot, you're not broken. We just have to rewire your inputs. That's step one. This is your mental nutrition. If you get this right, you're going to be in better mental shape, and you'll be able to navigate a very noisy world with a little bit more clarity. This is hard. It takes patience. You will feel friction in the beginning, like trying to watch a movie without scrolling. See if you can do that. Like, see if you can watch The Secret Life of Walter Mitty or Whiplash or a Studio Ghibli movie without looking at your phone once. See if you can do that. That is a form of mental nutrition that you can start with. Really give your attention to that art. Those are great works of cinematic art that you'll get something out of by watching. Give your attention to it. Pay attention to the human themes, the human stories. See what it makes you feel in your body. See if that is more satisfying to you as a storytelling creature than short form consumption. You're getting permission right now to watch a movie as a form of mental nutrition. Same thing applies to music. I think a good version of that would be like listening to an album all the way through. So like go to Spotify or, you can let your algorithm help you here. It's like look at what you've been listening to and then just take a deep dive on one of those things, really letting your attention sink into the feast of information that is and consuming it meaningfully and digesting it. You got to digest it for it to be worthwhile. Does that make sense? Okay. The second piece of this are your outputs, what you choose to do with your brain. You need to exercise your mind. So going back to the fitness example, if you were hypothetically out of shape and you wanted to get in shape, you would need some type of movement to achieve that because that's necessary for human life and vitality. The same thing is true for your brain. You got to use your brain. The cool thing here is, again, you can look at that natural curiosity that you had as a child and get cued into what you're good at, what you want to train, what you want to be better at. So for example, in school, what were you best at? And when I say what were you best at, if you're like, I wasn't good at anything, it's like, okay, what was not the hardest? Or like, what were you able to get through without hating your life? Were you able to write essays pretty easily? Even if it wasn't your favorite thing to do in the world, was that easier for you than doing a math worksheet? Or maybe the other way around? I'm going to give you some space on this one, and I really would like you to sit quietly with the question. When you were a child, what did it look like for you to play? I want you to bring up a memory of when you were playing. Were you building something with Legos? Were you playing pretend? Were you in some type of like organized sport, like playing with a ball? Like, I need you to go back to that moment. I need you to connect to a moment where you were 5, 6, 7, or 8 years old and you genuinely were joyful engaged in some type of meaningful game or play. It's not about the specific activity, but that feeling is what we want. That is where you should start in terms of your output. It can be an athletic endeavor where your brain is engaged in the activity at hand. It can be writing creatively or some other form of organized writing. It can be math or science. It can be some type of activity that requires you to focus on something for a long period of time, or even a short period of time. I think that these words hopefully are enough for you to get a sense of what I'm talking about here. The point is, it should be a little bit challenging, but not so hard that you don't want to do it. It has to be somewhat doable in the beginning. But find that thing, that's going to be your output. That is your mental workout. It should be exciting to you. When you're engaged in the task, you should kind of lose yourself in it. That's the feeling we're looking for. Now, if nothing comes up right now, you got to just try things. But you will find something. If you have no idea, I have 2 recommendations. Number 1 would be just start journaling your life. Like when you have a feeling or when your conscious experience swells around you, either positively or negatively, take out a journal and write out what is going on for you. And do that as poetically as you can. That's a way of relating to your conscious experience creatively. And you will lose yourself in that task. It's a really great way to process emotions, but also give yourself like a creative hobby that you could expand into something else. You could turn that into a more advanced form of art, like long-form creative writing, like filmmaking, like visual art, pottery. I don't know why that's always the example, but like something like that, right? Or on the other hand, if you're not much of a writing person, you might find that like playing with numbers is another great approach there. You don't have to use words to relate to your world. You can use your brain to solve problems. In my opinion, the best way to do this is with Brilliant. This video is sponsored by Brilliant, and I really think it's a great fit for anyone who has no idea how to start doing this. If you want to start training your brain by learning skills like math, science, programming, data science, skills that are really useful in the 21st century, and you want to do that in a way that is sustainable, accessible, makes it feel fun like a game, Brilliant is 100% the way to do this. Each lesson is built around hands-on problem solving. So you're not watching hour-long lectures around this stuff, ideas that you would never really digest or materialize. You're actually applying the concepts in real time by solving problems, and it almost turns it into a game that you want to play. Rewiring your brain to actually be excited to learn these things, it's very interesting, and it's worth trying. The lessons themselves are crafted and curated by award-winning lecturers, researchers. You can really trust it, and you know you're in good hands. But my favorite thing about Brilliant, far and away, is the habit-building component of this. In just like 5 minutes a day, seriously, you can start learning math again. If you feel like there's some cobwebs in your problem-solving skills that would probably be helpful in your day-to-day life, you can spend 5 minutes a day in the morning or at night training your brain. And it's very, very accessible. They help hold you accountable, but that habit building function immediately programs time into your day where you're taking care of yourself, where you're nurturing your mind. To try everything Brilliant has completely for free for 30 days, just go to brilliant.org/Josh Chuba, or you can scan the QR code on the screen right now, or you can click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off your annual subscription. The main idea here, one more time, is you need to feed your brain meaningful information, and then you need to use your brain to solve meaningful problems. You can do this in many different ways. You can do it creatively with writing. You can do it through hard problem solving, math and science. You can do it athletically. There's so many things you can do. But I think maybe the most important thing to recognize here, if you feel like you're suffering from brain rot, if you feel like you've lost control of your mind, you need to recognize that being engaged in meaningful activity like this, taking in meaningful information, challenging information that requires effort to consume, and then channeling that into work that requires effort to produce, that's what you want. That's what you actually want as a human being. And when you don't have something like that in your life, you will not be satisfied. It would be like, again, going back to the fitness example, it would be like if you were really hungry and you tried to live on a diet of Funyuns and Skittles. High stimulation, very low satisfaction. When you can program your inputs and outputs to really feed you mentally, you will truly feel nourished. It will require effort and it will require patience, but it will be worthwhile because you're going to feel good and it's going to get easier over time. Start small, start with short stories, start with a couple math problems a day, start with writing just little tiny journal entries throughout your day. This is all very, very accessible to you, but this is what it looks like to resist a culture of distraction, stimulation, short-term consumption. It's hard. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's important to recognize that because this is hard. I want to give you some empathy here because, like, this is hard. You didn't choose to be overwhelmed all the time. It is up to you to figure this out, and we're in this together. I'm doing it. But that's it. You got this. Um, Give it a shot. You have tools, and you are in control. You have so much more control than you realize. Seriously, do not give that up. Do not give that up. You're not broken. You might just be a little bit out of shape mentally. It doesn't take a very lot to get some good momentum going, and then you're actually going to want to keep going in the direction that you're in. The momentum is addictive in and of itself, so lean into it. That's it. I'll see you next time.